the big day is right around the corner with the dedication and public unveiling of the school and its history, and it's in a new space and it has a new purpose. Talk a little bit about all of those things being wrapped up in one day of celebration for Siloam School.
Oh, amen, right? So this is the day that literally hundreds of people who have helped make this project happen have been waiting for. And, part of why I'm so frazzled this morning is, the week of a big event, all the last minute snags and details have to be taken care of. But what it represents is, to me at least, and I think to a lot of people with this on this project, is that it represents a commitment to not just saving and sharing history in general, but specifically saving and sharing Black history in Charlotte, and that this is a city that recognizes that its history is important. I think we've seen in multiple other areas of the city where structures and buildings and things haven't been saved, and that history piece has been lost. And this is a win, a rare win, where we can say, no, we recognize that this is important. And not only do we recognize it's important, we're going to get behind it and make sure that not just us, but future generations can learn from our past. And for the museum specifically, it's an exciting way for us to visibly show our commitment to showing the diverse histories of Charlotte. Um, so yeah, that's a lot of words, Salad, but we're excited about it, and I think it just speaks to the fact that this is something that people want. They want to know their history. They want to know the truth of their history. And when you can step into a building, it's completely different than pictures or uh, just hearing an oral history. It's a tangible thing. So we're excited and the people are excited.
And I guess when you talk about the commitment that the museum has, you're already the home to the Alexander House. And
Yeah,
now you've got uh, this school, and it conveys a couple of important points of history. One, obviously, the oldest house in Mecklenburg County, and then a school whose original intent was to educate Black kids. Uh,
absolutely.
when you look at that, does that how does that help in terms of balancing out or adding to the museum's uh, palette of historical significance, artifacts, whatever?
Absolutely. So I think one, it further decenters and deglamorizes Hezekiah Alexander. We don't take away from the important things that he did for the state of North Carolina, but he also was a person who enslaved people of African descent, and we know at least 17 of them. This was a 600-acre plantation. So, on this little itty bitty 8 acres that are left, uh, to have Siloam School there is one, just a testimony to how much change has happened in America and in Charlotte from 1774 to 1924. And we hope that with our programs and exhibits, we can add color to that, that massive gap, but then also speak about what has changed since 1924. Why did we have to have these one room schoolhouses versus the integrated schools that we have today? And it's a great way for us to remind people that everything that we're experiencing and living with and take for granted today has its roots not just in the immediate past years, but the long history of how our city became to be. So for us, it's a tangible, visible way for people to trace back how we get to today based on the things that have happened in the past. And then I think really start the conversation of, well, if we didn't like these things and we see this is what has happened to get us to 2024, how do we change or how do we do things differently 2024 and beyond to make sure that nobody else is limited to a one room schoolhouse without air conditioning? My Lord. And then so we can get away from the mentality that one group of people is better than another, and that they deserve to be held in bondage. So for us, it's exciting in that it's it's visual history. It's no longer this worshipful stance of, oh, this house is so revered and we have to just love Hezekiah Alexander. I think it humanizes him. It brings voice to countless people who we may never know all their names and information, to show the resilience of all peoples of Charlotte.
And the other cool thing about Siloam School is it's being repurposed. Talk a little bit about that,
Absolutely.
how it fits in terms of explaining the history of education and especially education of Black children in Mecklenburg County and in America for that matter.
Right. So first and foremost, we know that what made Siloam School unique was, as far as our research has been able to show, this is that although they used the Rosenwald School blueprints and plans, this was the only school locally where they did not use Rosenwald funds to actually build the school. So this shows this is the only school, as far as we can tell, where this was 100% fully funded by the Black community of Mallard Creek. So that in and of itself is a testament that they said, thank you for the designs, but we've got it from here. And we know the lumber company that donated the cherry wood floors was a Black owned company. We know that the people who worked on the house were the tradespeople who lived in that area. So it was truly bringing the best materials to sort of have a for us, by us moment in Black education. What it represents today is that it shows that despite all of the oppression and segregation and discrimination that our ancestors have faced, they still wanted to improve their station. There's a lot of people who will tell you that poor people or disenfranchised people don't advocate for themselves and they don't want to do better. They're just happy with where they are. But Siloam is proof that that's not the case. And even today, I think that, and I hope that it inspires people that every person wants their children to have better opportunities than they had. I don't know anyone who's like, oh, you're my kid. I hope your life sucks. Nobody says, but this school shows people that yes, we've come so far, but we still have more work to do. And just because you are poor, or just because you are Black, or just because you are whatever it is that people want to hold against you, it doesn't mean that you cannot advocate for yourself and provide future generations and future young people an opportunity that you may not have been able to experience for yourself.
And when you look at the process of going from basically discovering that the school actually exists, it was kind of stuck out there in front
Right.
of an apartment complex, to figuring out, oh, well, it has historic value, to, it's in really bad shape. How do we preserve it? To
Right.
how do we move it? And how do we give it another chance of viability in life? Talk a little bit about that process and how long ago it was, because it's been a
Oh,
8, 9 year stretch.
yes, it has been 8 years. I've only been on at the museum for the last 2 years of this project. So the bulk of this work was done before I got here. And I'll say that you're absolutely correct. If you look at the photos of before anything happened, it looks like, a shack in the middle of this really nice apartment complex. And I think that's a perfect example of how our history, as yes, African Americans, but as Charlotteans and Americans, is right there in our faces all the time. And it's just something that I'm sure the people who live there, oh yeah, that's that old raggedy shack, and went on about their business and paid it no mind until someone said, wait a minute, why is this here? Why, the fact that it's here, it had to have been something, because it's not like it's just a shanty town tent or something. There's a reason this building was built. And when people had that curiosity to just look beyond the surface of it looking like a raggedy shack, that's when the history of this school has been resurfaced. And so I strongly encourage people don't just, wait for a school book or even a museum to be the one to tell you your history. Look around you. There is all kinds of history staring you in your face if you just take that extra step of having curiosity to learn more about it. But beyond that, this process again has been 8 years. It started with the Silver Star Group, who goes around and tries to save African American landmarks. They, as I understand, they mostly work on cemeteries and they sometimes support other schoolhouses. But they handed this project over to the museum once they realized how big of a project this would be, and they've been great partners ever since. But it also meant getting those mustard seed donations from the community. It's easy to be thankful for the big multi-zero donors, and we are thankful for them. We need more. But it was the people who gave, well, I have $20. I think this is important, but this is all I can give. I have $10. I have 50. I have 5. Those mustard seed gifts that also added up to get to where we are today. And it also included the vision of allies. It was Tribute Companies, which is not a minority owned company, who recognized, we could have just bulldozed this school over and who was going to stop us? Because that's not exactly Charlotte's strong suit. Nobody stopped you from knocking things down. But they even said, you know what, we recognize this is important. We will pay for the move and move it to wherever it needs to be. And so, even having that support of people outside of the Black community to recognize this piece of Black history is important is how we got to today. And I know I'm going to see you on Saturday. So, I hope you enjoy what we have planned for you. Uh, it'll be a fun morning just to really show how many people have had their hands in this project to get from, I guess, 2016 to today.
Is it in the midst of the celebration? Do you get to take a breath once it's
No,
finally open, as
no,
opposed
my
to
breath will be Sunday morning after June 15th, where
well,
I'm going to sit in my house and do nothing. No, honestly, I don't want us to, I'm just joking, but I don't want us to stop and take a breath. I think that this is the type of momentum and the type of work that not just Charlotte Museum of History, but all history museums in Charlotte need to be taking. We need to be actively and constantly educating the people about the history of our city, and not just from the position of wealthy business men, from the perspective of all peoples. And as much history has been lost due to development and gentrification, there's still a lot more out there that can be saved and can be preserved. So, especially at Charlotte Museum of History, I think we need to, you know, keep our foots on the pedal of progress and really just remind people this isn't just a one-time thing and we're going to go back to status quo. This is what we do, and it's why people should support us if they care about the history of their community and the city as a whole to be saved.
and understanding that the people who went to this particular school, you know,
Uh-huh.
their numbers are dwindling. There aren't very many of them left.
One left.
One, if you are putting together something like this, how important is it to tell that story so that other children who don't have to go to a school like Siloam School, how important is it to get them to understand the history and how things were back in the day before their grandparents may have even been born?
Right. So we do have one known alum. Let me say that because I'll say only one and then someone will come out with somebody else. So as far as we know, there's one living person who attended Siloam when it was a school. And her name is Martha Behringer. She is over 100 years old. And she we have done 2 oral histories with her where she remembers as much as she can about her life as a small child, which, it's been 100 years. I can understand some memories are a little fuzzy. But her and her family, we have been engaged with them throughout the entire process. And we've uh, even extending beyond that, we know that once the school became a house, there were families that lived there. So we've had oral histories and conversations with the family that lived in it when it was a house. And we've had conversations with the owners from when it went from being a home to an auto garage. So we have community stories and feedback and uh, legacy, if you will, from all three phases of this building's existence. And it's something that at the museum, we're actively working with the Atkins Library at UNC Charlotte to have these things digitized so that they're accessible. And it has influenced the way we interpret the school as far as exhibitry and programs and things like that. Why it's important for children today, I mean, I don't think that anyone would say that knowing history is not important. I mean, knowing history allows you to, it works your brain muscles to be able to see, okay, if this happened and that happened, and here's where we are today, what are those actions and things that led up to these seemingly smaller events that bring us to the society we live in today? And there's research out there that shows history and civics education improves empathy for children, it improves logic and reasoning skills, and it just makes people overall more civically engaged, be it voting, be it being productive citizens of society. All of that has its roots in history education. For local children specifically, I think it connects them to a time that, they may not have someone who was alive in the 1940s in their life. And so it sort of builds a sense of community where you may not have your specific ancestor who was alive at that time, but you can relate to somebody whose family is in the same neighborhood you're from, but they had this experience and they went through these things so that you could go to wherever school it is you go to now. So if they made all of these sacrifices for you, what can you do to improve yourself? And then so that 100 years from now, there's someone looking at you to say, wow, look at all the things that so-and-so did in 2024 so that I could go to an even better place for my education. So it's super important that our young people are engaged in history, not just because I'm biased as a museum president, but because there is research that shows history education makes better people, better citizens, and it creates people who understand and empathize with others more.
Well said. And it obviously you're talking about it was an educational place, a living space,
Mhm.
auto garage. I mean, you got commerce, you got education, you got housing. So you're covering
Right.
up ground there in
Absolutely.
one building.
And I'll say that it's because a lot of people don't think that the arts are a worthwhile use of municipal funding. That's a whole separate conversation. But when you look at the people who it took to get this done, yes, we have our historians who did the researching and contacting people. And yes, we have our wealthy philanthropists who contributed, but the actual work was all done by tradespeople. And so when you hear the argument, oh, everybody's not meant to go to college, or oh, the arts, they don't do anything for the community, who do they think did the work to move the school, to replace those floorboards? We get the paint that's out there. It took STEM research to analyze paint chips that were buried deep into the wood to figure out what color used to be painted there. We've used all sorts of blue collar, quote unquote, jobs and people to get this work done. So even if you don't like history, you think museums are frou-frou and it's a waste of society's time, which, I feel sorry for you if that's your life. But even if that's you, you can't deny that this was an economic driver for the community, even for those who you would not traditionally think of when you think of museum work.
Yeah. Well, Can't wait until Saturday. It's going to be a great time, no doubt. And it's going to be a great addition to your arsenal of history tools.
Thank you, thank
And
you.
yeah, can't wait to see it. And Terry, thank you for everything and looking forward to much success going forward with your newest projects, whatever they may be. But
Oh, and we
great
got
to
some
see you
big
along.
stuff brewing.
Can't wait. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.